Hello friends. Welcome to Luxury Stories, the ultimate destination for lovers of high-end experiences, opulent lifestyles, and untold tales of extravagance. Your support means the world to us. Please do well to hit that subscription button and turn on the notification bell to get notified on our subsequent stories. Don't forget to like and share with friends. Now, relax and enjoy the story. Annabelle Wilson had always been a generous soul. Born into an influential family in the fictional African coastal city called Cape Sunrise, she inherited both a vast fortune and a keen sense of responsibility to help those in need. Her parents had built a massive business empire centered on real estate, shipping, and a successful chain of luxury hotels. After they passed away in a tragic plane crash, Annabelle decided to carry on their legacy by supporting underprivileged communities and preserving the region's natural beauty. One sweltering afternoon, Annabelle hosted a grand fundraiser at her primary estate. Towering palm trees lined the circular driveway, and the main entrance was decorated with flowers. She had invited wealthy businessmen, local politicians, and socialites to encourage them to donate generously to her charitable foundation. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the air, while a small band played cheerful tunes. Amid the crowd of elegantly dressed guests, a man named Christopher Adams stood out. He wore a sleek white suit that complemented his well-groomed appearance. With his confident smile and smooth-talking charm, Christopher mingled effortlessly among the city's elite. Nobody suspected that he came from a rough background, one far removed from this world of wealth and comfort. He harbored a simmering resentment against anyone who was born into a fortune. Annabelle noticed Christopher when he approached her near a large floral centerpiece. He introduced himself in a polished manner. "Christopher, good evening, Ms. Wilson. I must say, your event is breathtaking. Your charitable work is truly inspiring." Annabelle, smiling, "Thank you. It means the world to me that people show their support. Our community has so many needs, and I want to do my part." Annabelle found his voice gentle and his gaze unwavering. She felt momentarily disarmed by his confidence, interpreting it as sincerity. They chatted for a few minutes about her foundation's mission, during which Christopher asked a variety of questions that showed a keen interest in her business and her philanthropic goals. "Christopher, I've recently invested in clean energy solutions. Perhaps we can collaborate someday to bring green infrastructure to the city." Annabelle, enthusiastic, "That sounds wonderful. I've always wanted to integrate more sustainable methods into our shipping operations." As the night progressed, Annabelle found herself gravitating toward Christopher. He seemed to understand her dedication to the environment and charitable causes. By the end of the fundraiser, they were exchanging phone numbers. She promised to follow up with him regarding potential partnerships for community projects. When the event concluded, Annabelle retreated to her private lounge to take off her heels and rest. She caught herself smiling at the thought of Christopher's friendly eyes and the warmth in his tone. With all the chaos of running her empire, she rarely had time for anything resembling personal connection. She had always been cautious about the men who pursued her, suspecting their interest in her fortune. Yet Christopher felt different in that moment, genuine, curious, almost supportive of her dreams. Outside, Christopher rode away in a rented luxury car, glancing once in the rearview mirror at the grand mansion behind him. A satisfied smirk tugged at his lips. He had finally secured a reason to be in Annabelle's world. A few weeks passed, and in that time, Annabelle and Christopher grew closer. They spent many afternoons discussing business strategies and philanthropic goals. Sometimes they dined at the finest seaside restaurants, sampling fresh seafood while overlooking shimmering waves. Other times, they strolled through the bustling markets of Cape Sunrise, buying local crafts and handing out donations to street vendors in need. Despite Christopher's outward kindness, there was a hidden side to him that Annabelle could not see. Born in one of the poorer suburbs on the outskirts of the city, Christopher had endured a childhood marred by financial struggle. His father had passed away early, and his mother, struggling to support the family, had to work menial jobs. The resentment he felt over his impoverished background transformed into a firm determination. He would never be powerless again. This ambition led Christopher to try different business ventures. He met influential people, made deals, and learned how to charm investors. Yet his money was always tied up in one risky project or another, leaving him short on liquidity. When he attended Annabelle's charity event, He did so with a plan: target a wealthy figure, win her trust, and acquire the resources he felt he deserved. One evening, Christopher visited Annabelle's estate to discuss her foundation's upcoming scholarship program for underprivileged students. Dressed in casual attire, she welcomed him into her study, which was lined with books about finance, global politics, and environmental science. A large window offered an unobstructed view of the ocean beyond, glimmering under the moonlight. Annabelle, gesturing to a seat, "Please, come in. Can I get you something to drink?" Christopher, smiling politely, "Just some water would be great. Thank you." She poured him a glass and took a seat across from him at a polished mahogany table. A pair of reading glasses perched on her nose, which only heightened her air of intelligence. "Annabelle, so, about the scholarship program. I want to offer full tuition, including living allowances, to at least 20 students. It might cost a considerable amount, but I think it will change lives." "Christopher, it's a wonderful idea. Perhaps I can contribute some funding as well, or at least help you manage the budget and public relations." Annabelle beamed, feeling touched that he wanted to be involved. She had grown to appreciate his willingness to participate in her charitable endeavors. But, as Christopher listened, his mind drifted to darker thoughts. He could see how easily Annabelle trusted him and how conveniently she talked about her wealth. He imagined what it would be like if everything she possessed became his. A single, resentful ambition took root in his heart, to possess not just her love, but her entire empire. He was patient, though. He spent their evening together praising her plans, subtly learning more details about her finances, and reinforcing the image of a dedicated partner. The conversation ended on a high note, and Annabelle was left feeling that she had finally found someone who understood her mission. Later that night, while Annabelle slept soundly in her grand bedroom, Christopher returned to his modest apartment. The contrast between her opulence and his humble living situation spurred his envy. Standing alone in front of a mirror in a dimly lit room, he murmured to himself, "Christopher, I'll take her entire world one step at a time." In the following months, Christopher cultivated a relationship that appeared, at least on the surface, filled with love and support. He proposed to Annabelle in a grand romantic gesture on a cliff overlooking the sea at sunset, presenting her with a diamond ring. Overwhelmed with emotion, Annabelle said yes. She believed they shared a vision, a life filled with passion, generosity, and dedication to social causes. Their wedding was a citywide spectacle. The ceremony took place in an elegant cathedral adorned with white flowers, while hundreds of guests, including local politicians and wealthy industrialists, looked on. Traditional African drumming combined with Western classical violin music to highlight the fusion of cultures in Cape Sunrise. Annabelle wore an exquisite gown with intricate lace detail, and Christopher looked dashing in a tailored black tuxedo. "Priest, do you, Christopher Adams, take Annabelle Wilson to be your lawfully wedded wife, to love and to cherish, in times of wealth and times of want? Until death do you part?" "Christopher, with practiced conviction, I do." "Priest, and do you, Annabelle Wilson, take Christopher Adams to be your lawfully wedded husband, to support and respect, through life's challenges and joys, until death do you part?" "Annabelle, I do." People clapped, tears were shed, and cameras flashed. Outside, a large reception area had been set up under a canopy of blossoming jacaranda trees. Musicians played lively tunes, and well-dressed servers floated among the guests offering champagne and gourmet delicacies. Yet, amid the celebration, a few of Annabelle's closest confidants felt a twinge of unease. Her trusted lawyer, Richard Kane, a man in his early 50s with a calm demeanor, had his doubts about Christopher's sudden appearance in Annabelle's life. He approached Annabelle in a quiet corner during the reception. "Richard," in a low voice, "I know this might not be the best time, but have you thought about drafting a prenuptial agreement or reviewing your financial holdings?" Annabelle, smiling politely, "Christopher and I trust each other. I appreciate your concern, Richard, but I believe in honesty and openness." Richard, reluctantly, "Just be careful. If you ever need anything, please remember I'm here." Annabelle nodded, her attention soon drawn by other well-wishers. Meanwhile, Christopher noticed Richard's protective stance. He made a mental note to keep the lawyer at bay. Within a week, Christopher persuaded Annabelle to sign business expansion documents that gave him significant oversight of her assets. Under the pretense of helping her manage her empire, he gained real power in the form of account signatures and property titles. To Annabelle, it was a show of unity. She thought they were building a life together. For Christopher, it was the next step in a carefully orchestrated plan. Not long after settling into married life, Christopher began to feel that his plan was moving too slowly. He wanted total control of Annabelle's wealth without any restrictions or legal obstacles. He started to drop hints about taking a private trip together, a romantic journey to strengthen their bond. Annabelle, ever the romantic, happily agreed. Christopher arranged for a private boat to take them out to a quieter expanse of sea far from the bustle of Cape Sunrise. It was a pristine day. The sky was bright blue, and seagulls circled overhead. Annabelle arrived at the dock wearing a light dress, a wide sun hat, and sandals. She was excited, thinking Christopher had planned a day of snorkeling or perhaps a surprise picnic in a hidden cove. The boat was sleek and modern, equipped with luxurious seating and a small dining area. Christopher steered them away from the harbor, guiding the craft through calm waters until skyscrapers and busy docks faded into the distance. Once they reached open water, he reduced the speed, letting the gentle waves sway the boat. Annabelle stood at the railing, looking at the endless horizon. Annabelle, smiling, "It's so peaceful out here. I'm glad you thought of this. We both needed a break from meetings and business deals." Christopher, forcing a smile, "Yes. I wanted to have you all to myself, without any distractions." He glanced at the far-off shoreline. Hardly any other vessels were in sight. This was exactly what he had planned, a secluded area where no one would witness his final act. Taking a deep breath, he walked toward Annabelle with a somber expression. "Christopher, I think we might be having engine trouble. Could you check the fuel gauge? It's over there by the side of the engine panel." Annabelle, concerned, "Is everything okay? We can call for help if needed." "Christopher, just a quick look, please." Trusting him, Annabelle leaned over the small console near the rear of the boat to check the gauge. At that instant, Christopher summoned all the nerve he had. Without another word, he violently pushed her over the side of the boat. A scream escaped her lips before she hit the water, swallowed by a sudden splash. Stunned by the betrayal, Annabelle flailed in the ocean, gasping in shock as the salty water stung her eyes. She tried calling out, "Christopher, help!" but her words were drowned out by the boat's engine roaring to life. In moments, the sleek vessel sped off, leaving her alone in the vast sea. Struggling to stay afloat, Annabelle fought panic. The sun blazed above her, and her arms began to tire. Every wave threatened to pull her under. In the distance, she could see the shape of Christopher's boat shrinking until it became a mere dot. As fear squeezed her chest, she prayed for a miracle. That miracle arrived in the form of Henry Cooper, a humble fisherman who happened to be out on his old, rickety boat. From afar, Henry had seen a flash of movement, a person falling overboard. Alarmed, he steered his fishing boat as fast as possible toward the spot. At first, Annabelle had no idea anyone was coming to her rescue. The waves buffeted her from side to side, and her energy waned. But then she heard the chugging of a small boat's engine and turned to see Henry reaching out his arm. "Henry," grunting as he pulls her on board, "don't worry, I've got you. Take it easy." Collapsing onto the deck, Annabelle coughed up salt water and breathed in shaky gulps of air. She was soaked and trembling. Henry quickly grabbed a threadbare blanket from a storage box and draped it over her shoulders. Annabelle, barely audible, "Thank you, thank you." "Henry, you're lucky I saw you. Where's the person who came with you?" Annabelle's eyes welled with tears. She couldn't bring herself to say the name of the man she had once loved. All she could do was gesture helplessly at the empty horizon. Henry, sensing her shock, decided to focus on keeping her warm and safe for the moment. He handed her a bottle of water to rinse her mouth. The fishing boat's old engine coughed and sputtered, but Henry managed to guide it toward the nearest strip of land, an isolated beach several miles from Cape Sunrise. With his help, Annabelle made it onto the shore. She lay on the sand, staring at the sky. Christopher had tried to kill her. Her mind struggled to process the magnitude of this betrayal. Over the next hour, Henry prepared a small fire to help her dry off. He brewed some simple tea with the supplies he kept on his boat. Once Annabelle's trembling subsided, he asked her gently, "Henry, I don't want to pry, but do you have someone who can come get you?" Family, friends. Annabelle, voice shaking yes. I need to contact my lawyer, Richard Kane. He'll know what to do. But please, Henry, I beg you, keep my survival a secret for now. Henry scratched his beard, confused yet sympathetic. He could see the urgency in her eyes and nodded. Henry, okay, if that's what you want. I can keep quiet. Let's just make sure you're safe first. Then we can figure everything out. Annabelle's gaze hardened as she stared into the flickering flames of the fire. She would not remain a victim. She would return to Cape Sunrise and claim what was rightfully hers. But for now, she needed to stay hidden. She needed to heal. She needed a plan. For the next several days, Henry sheltered Annabelle in a small shack near a quiet fishing cove. He had a network of fellow fishermen who barely knew about the city's high society gossip, which made it easier for Annabelle to keep a low profile. She used a basic radio and an outdated cell phone that Henry sometimes carried to reach out discreetly to Richard Kane. Annabelle felt anger and humiliation coursing through her veins. She had trusted Christopher, loved him wholeheartedly, and even shared control of her family's empire with him. Now he had tried to murder her to steal that fortune. She also felt guilty that she hadn't listened to the doubts whispered by her trusted friends and employees. One late afternoon, while Henry was repairing fishing nets, Annabelle sat with the makeshift phone in her hands, speaking quietly with Richard. Richard, surprised and emotional, my God. Annabelle, are you sure you're all right? The entire city thinks you disappeared at sea. Christopher's told everyone you're missing. Annabelle, I'm alive, but I need your help. He pushed me off a boat and left me to die. Please don't tell anyone you've heard from me yet. Richard, of course. Just tell me what you need. Annabelle, I need evidence, proof that he's been transferring my assets. I suspect he's lying to the public to gain full control. Can you gather all the paperwork he's filed? Any unusual transactions? Any property he's sold or tried to sell? Richard, I'm on it. And Annabelle, I'm so sorry I didn't push harder to protect you. Annabelle, it's not your fault. We'll make this right. After the call ended, Annabelle stared at the ocean, fists clenched. She was not the same trusting woman she had been before. She could almost feel her heart hardening, fueled by betrayal. If Christopher thought he had gotten away with murder, he was sorely mistaken. Henry approached, carrying a metal box of tools. He had overheard fragments of her conversation, though he kept a respectful distance. Henry, I suppose you really are someone important in that big city, huh? Annabelle, I am, or I was. It's a long story. Henry, softly. If you need me to help in any way, just let me know. I may not have much, but I'm decent with a boat, and I don't like seeing good people get hurt. A wave of gratitude washed over her. She had met this kind fisherman under the worst circumstances, yet he had shown her genuine kindness. It was a stark contrast to the poisonous love Christopher had offered. Annabelle, thank you, Henry. I will never forget what you've done. When this is over, I promise to repay your kindness. Henry merely waved a hand, as though he needed no reward. He was a man who believed in helping first and asking questions later. Meanwhile, back in Cape Sunrise, Christopher was living the high life in Annabelle's absence. He had announced that his beloved wife had gone missing during a tragic outing at sea. He played the role of a grieving husband in public, but behind closed doors, he reveled in his newfound power. He moved quickly to sell off smaller real estate holdings, pocketing large sums of money. He cut funding to several of Annabelle's charitable projects, explaining to the public that the family empire was in mourning and needed to pause certain commitments. The lavish mansion that once buzzed with philanthropic gatherings now hosted extravagant parties featuring the city's elite. Luxury cars lined the driveway. Champagne flowed freely. Christopher, raising a glass at a party, to my dear wife Annabelle, who is, presumably lost at sea. Let us all hope for a miracle. A chorus of toasts followed, though some guests shifted uncomfortably at the morbid display. In truth, many suspected Christopher was simply exploiting Annabelle's absence to enrich himself, but no one dared confront him directly. He had lawyers, armed security, and a well-crafted sob story on his side. One evening, Christopher invited a group of foreign investors to the mansion to discuss potential partnerships. While giving them a tour of the estate, he claimed full control of the business empire. He bragged about the shipping lines, boasted of strategic partnerships with local politicians, and even hinted he might expand into luxury resorts up the coast. As they walked past a painting of Annabelle's parents, one investor asked, "Investor, this place is so full of history. Does your wife's family still have influence?" Christopher, coolly, "I'm afraid she's no longer with us. As her legal spouse, I carry out her wishes. We had planned many expansions, and I intend to fulfill them in her memory." He delivered the line with solemn drama, though inside, he felt only triumph. After the deal discussions ended, Christopher walked through the empty corridors, swirling a glass of whiskey in one hand. He paused outside Annabelle's old office, glancing at the family portrait on the wall. A ghost of a smirk formed on his lips. Christopher, muttering, "You should have seen it coming, Annabelle. Now everything is mine." But what Christopher did not know was that rumors were spreading through the city. Some staff members whispered that they had seen small signs, documents half completed, personal items missing from the estate. They questioned if Annabelle was truly lost, or if something more sinister was at play. These whispers grew, fueled by subtle hints that Annabelle might be alive. A month after her ordeal, Annabelle decided the time had come to return to Cape Sunrise. Armed with the evidence Richard had discreetly sent her, records of fraudulent transactions and suspicious bank transfers, she was ready to reclaim her life. She had physically recovered, thanks to Henry's care, but her spirit bore the scars of betrayal. Henry insisted on accompanying her to the outskirts of the city. He steered his battered pickup truck down dusty roads, avoiding the main highways to keep a low profile. The sun had just begun its ascent, painting the sky in subtle hues of orange and pink. Henry, pulling over, "This is as far as I go, Annabelle. If you need me again, you know how to reach me." Annabelle, grateful, "Thank you for everything. I promise I'll stay in touch. I owe you more than words can express." She slipped out of the truck and found herself near a discreet entrance to one of her father's old warehouses, a location Christopher would have overlooked. Wearing a simple hooded jacket and sunglasses, she made her way inside, where Margaret Hill, a longtime friend, waited with a nervous smile. Margaret was one of the few people Annabelle trusted with her secret. "Margaret, Annabelle, thank heaven you're alive. I've been so worried." Annabelle, embracing her, "I'm alive, but we have a lot of work to do." Working together, Margaret and Richard set up a temporary base of operations. The warehouse was dusty, filled with old shipping crates and broken furniture. Richard soon arrived with a laptop and a stack of folders detailing Christopher's transactions. "Richard, everything is here. He's moved millions out of your accounts into offshore banks. He's sold property at suspiciously low prices, likely laundering money. Annabelle, he must be stopped. But we need a strategic approach. If I come out accusing him without concrete proof or the right timing, he could manipulate the story." They decided on a plan. Annabelle would remain hidden for a bit longer, collecting even more damning evidence, and forging alliances with influential figures who once supported her family. At the same time, Richard and Margaret would quietly alert certain officials and the media about irregularities. A dramatic public reveal needed to happen where Christopher couldn't simply deny or cover up his crimes. Although Annabelle felt her anger burning, she forced herself to remain calm. She wanted to see Christopher's downfall, but she knew that revenge was best served not just through violence, but through undeniable truth. The city had to witness it, beyond any shadow of a doubt. Cape Sunrise was abuzz with excitement over a grand charity gala, one that Christopher had organized under Annabelle's charitable foundation's name. He intended to spotlight himself as the benevolent figure who would sustain her philanthropic legacy. The gala was set in the city's largest event hall, decorated with glittering lights, African motifs, and fresh flowers imported from abroad. Security was tight, with Christopher's personal guards stationed everywhere. Dressed in an expensive suit, he greeted guests as they arrived. The press milled about, taking photos and asking for sound bites. Reporter, "Mr. Adams, any updates on the search for your missing wife?" Christopher, putting on a solemn face, "Sadly, no. The authorities believe she's lost to the sea. But tonight, we remember her passion for charity. I'll be donating a large sum in her honor." Inside, the gala included an auction, musical performances, and a grand stage set for speeches. As the evening wore on, Christopher took the microphone. "Christopher, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming tonight. This foundation meant everything to Annabelle. I stand before you, determined to keep her dream alive. Before he could launch into his rehearsed speech, murmurs spread through the crowd. People turned toward the back of the hall. Emerging from the dimly lit entrance was Annabelle, dressed simply yet strikingly, her posture and gaze radiating confidence. Christopher's eyes widened in horror, his face turning ashen. He froze mid-sentence. A hush fell over the crowd. From the stage, Christopher forced a tight, unconvincing smile. "Christopher, Annabelle? You're alive." Annabelle, coolly, "Yes, I'm alive. Sorry to interrupt, but I believe there's some business we need to address." Reporters rushed to capture this moment. Cameras flashed, and gasps could be heard throughout the hall. Security guards hesitated, unsure of what to do. Annabelle pulled out a stack of documents, eyes never leaving Christopher. "Annabelle, for weeks, I've watched you claim my property, sell my assets, and spread the lie that I was missing. You even canceled charitable projects I was personally funding. I have evidence that you tried to murder me at sea." The overhead screens flickered to show images of suspicious bank transfers and recorded phone logs obtained by Richard. Each piece was labeled with dates, amounts, and Christopher's forged signatures. The crowd began to murmur more urgently. Christopher tried to regain composure. "Christopher, this must be a misunderstanding. Annabelle, I was worried about you. People here can attest to my concern. Annabelle, you can stop pretending. I have a witness. The fisherman who saved me has already given his account to the authorities. You pushed me off that boat. You left me to drown. Then you proceeded to loot what took generations of my family to build." With impeccable timing, Henry stepped forward from the edge of the crowd. He wore plain clothes, but stood tall. "Henry, I saw him. I rescued her. She would have died if I hadn't pulled her out of the water." Journalists began bombarding Christopher with questions. The live feed broadcasted his panicked face to millions across the region. "Reporter, Mr. Adams, how do you respond to these allegations? Is it true you try to kill your wife for her fortune?" Christopher lost his composure. He shouted at his guards, who were now unsure whether to protect him or heed the demands of the law enforcement officials present. Panic spread. A group of police officers, accompanied by Richard and other legal authorities, stepped in with arrest warrants. They moved quickly toward Christopher. "Officer Christopher Adams, you are under arrest for attempted murder, fraud, and embezzlement. Put your hands behind your back." Christopher tried to make a run for it, but a guard wrestled him to the ground. Cameras captured every second. The once proud figure was now cuffed before the very people he had tried to woo. A wave of shock and anger rippled through the guests. Some hissed in disapproval, while others simply stood in stunned silence. Annabelle remained on the stage, documents in hand, heart pounding. She felt a mix of rage, relief, and something she might never have expected: closure. The entire city finally saw Christopher's true nature. There was no room left for him to manipulate the narrative. Christopher's trial became the biggest story in Cape Sunrise. For days, the media dissected every part of the scandal. Analysts reviewed how he had forged documents, siphoned funds, and tried to pass himself off as a mourning husband. Henry took the stand, describing in detail how he saw Christopher's boat speeding away after pushing Annabelle overboard. Richard also testified, presenting hard evidence of financial crimes. Annabelle sat through it all, wearing a calm exterior even though she was reliving the trauma of nearly losing her life. Each time Christopher glared at her from behind the defendant's table, she refused to look away. In the end, the court found him guilty on multiple counts. He was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, with little hope of early release. After the sentencing, Annabelle felt an immense burden lift from her shoulders. For the first time since that day at sea, she could breathe freely. She returned to her estate, which needed extensive reorganization. The staff who remained loyal welcomed her with tears and applause. She vowed to rebuild her foundation with renewed vigor. Stepping into the office that Christopher had once occupied, she had a pang of sadness. The walls felt suffocating, reminding her of the betrayal and violence. But she resolved to turn her pain into a lesson. Her first act was to re-establish funding for all the halted charitable projects. She penned personal letters of apology to the students whose scholarships were disrupted. Her next step was to establish a new charitable initiative aimed at helping vulnerable individuals navigate legal battles, especially in cases of domestic abuse and financial exploitation. She dedicated this initiative to her late parents, who had always championed helping the less fortunate. With the help of Richard and Margaret, she set up legal clinics in poorer parts of Cape Sunrise, ensuring that no one else would be as vulnerable as she had been. In a symbolic move, Annabelle quietly invited Henry to her home. She greeted him in the estate's sunlit garden, a place where colorful flowers bloomed against the backdrop of a sparkling fountain. She offered him a part-time position overseeing a small fishing outreach project she wanted to fund, aimed at helping local fishermen upgrade their equipment and improve their livelihoods. Annabelle, smiling warmly, "It's not enough to repay you, but I'd be honored if you'd work with me. You saved my life, Henry." Henry, sheepish grin, "I'd be glad to help. Really, it's too generous. I only did what anyone decent would do." Annabelle, "Sometimes what seems simple is the greatest gift of all." He nodded, and they shared a quiet moment of understanding. In that moment, Annabelle realized how something as tragic as betrayal had led her to discover new friendships and renewed purpose. Cape Sunrise buzzed with news of Christopher's incarceration. People who had once attended his glamorous parties now spoke of him in hushed, disapproving tones. Annabelle, however, chose not to revel in the city's judgment of him. She had faced death and loss, but she emerged with her integrity and compassion intact. Not long after, she called a press conference to address the public. Dressed in a simple but elegant suit, she spoke from the steps of the courthouse where Christopher had been tried. "Annabelle, I want to thank everyone who believed in me and supported the truth. I also want to assure the people of Cape Sunrise that our foundation's mission remains strong. We will continue to invest in education, healthcare, and sustainability initiatives that can uplift our community." A round of applause rose from the gathered crowd. Behind the cameras, Margaret and Richard nodded in approval. They could see the spark in Annabelle's eyes. This was no longer the naive young billionaire who trusted blindly. This was a resilient survivor, determined to use her resources to make a difference and to stand as a beacon of hope for others who faced betrayal or abandonment. Within a year, the memory of Christopher's deception lingered only as a cautionary tale. The battered remains of her once trusting heart had healed into something stronger. Whenever she felt a shadow of doubt or pain, she reminded herself that she had overcome the worst possible betrayal. And so, the story of Annabelle Wilson became legendary in Cape Sunrise, the billionaire who nearly drowned in the depths of the ocean at her husband's hand, only to rise again stronger than ever. Though the waves had once threatened to swallow her whole, she emerged not as a victim, but as a powerful force for change, proving that true wealth, in the end, lies in one's determination to do good. Thanks for watching. If you find this story interesting, do well to hit the subscription button and turn on the notification bell for our subsequent stories. Don't forget to like and share this video to others. See you in our next story.